Hey there, this is Erica Merrill, and I am the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I am going to be interviewing the esteemed attorney Joseph Nivin today. As we do every Friday, he is going to bring us some really interesting stories and information on what happens in family court. And today we are going to be talking about the appeals from family court. So what happens if you don't like what happens is basically what we're talking about. So welcome, attorney Joseph Nivin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we'll get started and we're going to talk about, what happens. I mean, I just like to point out that people go to court for a long time to get a decision. Am I right?
Absolutely. If you go to trial, which means that you cannot settle the case and you need the judge to make a decision for you, you'll be in court for a very long time.
Oh, God. What's the average?
For a trial?
I don't know. Yeah.
It's hard to say. I mean, if you end up going to trial, you're probably going to court for at least a year. But I have a case now that's been going on for 3 years, and I have another one that's been going on for 7 years.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, so that's putting it in perspective. I mean, somebody goes to court for that long and they don't like what happens, and can they appeal it? What can they do?
Yes. So from a final decision, with few exceptions, you can appeal it. So what happens is that you file what's called a notice of appeal. You also have to file what in my jurisdiction in the second department of the in the appellate division second department of the state of New York, you have to fill out what's called an information sheet. You have to attach the order that you're appealing from, and then you file it. At that point, you will get a scheduling order. You have to order the transcripts of the lower court's proceeding. These are from appeals from family court orders. There's a lot more to do if you're appealing from a Supreme Court order. From a family court order, you order the transcripts, and then you or your attorney would write what's called a brief, which is an argument for why it is that the family court was wrong to issue that order. So once you file the brief, then the other side, as well as the attorney for the child, if there is one, get a chance to respond. And then after that, you can reply to their briefs. At that point, after that, you're just waiting for the court to issue an order. If you request oral argument, meaning that you want to actually go to the court and make your argument before the judges, it's not required, but you have the right to request it. Then you also go to court, you do what's called oral argument, and then after that, you just wait for a decision.
It sounds like a lot of steps.
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess once you've been fighting, I guess in the interim, people just kind of keep doing what they've been doing for the most part, as far as, they share the custody they've been doing it, they pay the bills they've been doing. I mean, that's in theory what's supposed to happen. And you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but the question is going to be what now all of a sudden, whatever they've been doing is going to change. So maybe one parent's going to get a lot more time with the child than the other, or a lot more money, or, whatever it is. What can you do to stop that from happening right away in the interim of the appeal?
So you can ask for what's called a stay, which means that whatever orders were entered by the lower court stop while the appeal is going on. So this is common if, for example, there's been a change of custody. So let's say, for example, that while the custody case is going on, the children are with the mother. Then the final decision after trial is that custody goes to the father. Then what the mother will probably want to do is file what's called an order to show cause for a stay. That's a paper where you're asking that while the appeal is going on, that the children remain with the mother.
Okay. And is that pretty common that they'll do that? Or do they just say, I get out of here, you guys have been here for a year?
It depends on the situation. So I can tell you that I won one of those where I had the father actually, and at the end, the child was with the father, with my client, while we were in family court, and then the family court referee gave custody to the mother. So the next morning we were at the appellate division with an order to show cause for a stay. And while the appeal was going on, the child was allowed to stay with my client, with the father. And ultimately, the appellate division did reverse, and the child is still with the father.
Wow. So it's not a waste of time then.
Not in that case, it wasn't. But then there was another case that I did where it was just a counsel fees issue, where the my client was ordered to pay counsel fees for the mother's attorney, and we asked for a stay, and it was denied, and he did ultimately have to pay the counsel fees for the mother's attorney. So it can go both ways.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what if there's a temporary order? Because I know that a lot of times, because these take so long, people go and they get just a temporary arrangements for custody and payments of child support and alimony and all of that. Um, and so they award those things for on a temporary basis. What if you want to appeal a temporary order? Is that possible?
Yeah. So from family court, for a temporary order of custody, that's a pretty common one. If you want to appeal, you actually have to get permission from the appellate division for the right to appeal that. So it is pretty common that, let's say, the family court changes custody in the middle of the case, and issues a temporary order of custody to the person that did not have the child before. Then you have to ask for permission to appeal it, and they usually deny it. That's the truth. In any event, very often they'll give a court date that's so close that there's no way the appellate division will even answer the question as to whether or not the person has permission to appeal by the time they get to the next court date anyway. As far as temporary orders of support from family court, it's really worthless to appeal those because you'll get a court date soon enough. From Supreme Court, though, you automatically get, you can appeal from what's called the pendente lite order, a temporary order from the Supreme Court for an order of maintenance and child support. But the truth is that those appeals really take forever. So if you don't get a stay, then it's really not worthwhile to appeal those. If you get a stay, it's worthwhile. But the truth is that you'll probably, it's better practice to just get a trial date before the appeal gets disposed of anyway.
So let's say that you have a case, your ex just filed for divorce, and there's an average amount of time that you can actually get in and for a real court date. So that's why you have the temporary. So what you're saying is, let's say it's 6 months out is typically when you can get a court date, and some places are quicker than others. But you don't get in for your temporary hearing until 2 months before that date. What you're saying is there's just not going to be enough time to make it worthwhile, really.
Well, I'll give an example so that this way it's a little bit easier to understand. So let's say that you're the husband and you were ordered to pay $5,000 a month in temporary maintenance and temporary support. And you want to pay a lesser amount than that. Then you can file your notice of appeal. You don't have to ask for permission. And then you file an order to show cause at the appellate division for a stay of that order. If you get the stay, then it's worthwhile for you to continue with the appeal for no other reason other than that time is now on your side, because so long as you are going through the process, then you're paying an amount that you probably want to be paying. If you don't get the stay, then it's probably a better strategy to just push the case to trial and try to fight for a final order that is more suitable to you rather than just continue with the appeal.
Okay. Now, what happens if your ex appeals the order? What would happen next?
So what will happen is that your ex will get a scheduling order, which is a deadline to submit the brief, what they call perfecting the appeal. And then once you're served with the brief, then you have the chance to reply to it. Then at that point, he has the right to reply to your brief. Unfortunately, your ex will get last licks. You can request oral argument, meaning you can ask for the right to go before the appellate division and make your pitch before a panel of judges. and then at that point, you're just waiting for a decision from the appellate division.
A panel of judges?
Yes.
Wow. So that's pretty interesting. That you're going from just one to, like, for appeals, it's a much more serious thing.
Yes.
So this is going to be a silly question, but I always ask this question almost rhetorically. Like, wouldn't it be smart to get an attorney if you're going through something like this? I mean, it sounds like
Absolutely. I'll tell you that I've had people walk into my office and say my ex filed an appeal and he's representing himself. My answer is just wait for it to get dismissed. He will probably screw up the procedure and get it dismissed. And the only time that I've ever seen someone, I'm not even talking about winning the appeal, I'm talking about getting the ability to file a brief without screwing up the procedure and getting it dismissed, one time, and he had an attorney helping him. Every other time, they screw up the procedure and get it dismissed. So definitely don't do an appeal without an attorney.
Yeah, honestly, if this isn't your line of work, you probably shouldn't touch it anyway for any piece of anything in family court, because it's just going to affect you negatively for the rest of your life and your child's life. And, you really need to have somebody that knows what they're doing. Now, you're working out of New York City, and I know you see this every single day. And you're saying that sometimes people want to appeal themselves. I mean, how often do you actually see somebody in there butchering this by themselves, trying to represent themselves?
Pretty much every time. I mean, I represented somebody in a grandparent visitation case. I had the mother who was opposing the visitation. The grandmother happened to be dating a guy who used to be a jailhouse lawyer, and I guess he thought that he could do the appeal himself. I remember him walking into my office and throwing the notice of appeal on my desk, and I just sat back and waited. He screwed it up and it got dismissed. There are plenty of people who are very disgruntled about what they went through in family court, and they ran out of money for lawyers in family court. They tried to do the appeal themselves, and they always screw it up.
Wow. So you always have, you're such a nice person. And you get into these situations because of what you do, where the people are just all riled up, and you would think that someone like that, I guess he wasn't really a current present day attorney, but comes in.
He wasn't an attorney at all.
He wasn't an attorney at all.
No, he was, well, the term jailhouse lawyer in prison, they have their prisoners who are usually bright and who have all the time in the world to do legal research, and they help people to file papers themselves. So this guy had done some time in prison. He was not a licensed attorney. And he was a guy who was bright and took an interest in the law, and he helped people, other prisoners, to do their own research and to file papers on their own. But even he, who probably knew more than the average person about the law, but was not an attorney, he tried to help his girlfriend with her own case, and he didn't do a very good job.
Okay, so thank you for defining jailhouse attorney. I have never heard that before. But yeah, okay, so that makes more sense why he messed it up. I just thought he was hadn't done it for a while. So for anyone else that was confused about that that's interesting. Don't do your own work. No. Don't do your own brain surgery. Don't do your own lawyering. Don't do things that are really, really important that you're not an expert in. Get an expert. And if you're in New York City, definitely get attorney Joseph Nivin. He is fantastic. He knows things that I've never even thought about. And that's the kind of guy that you want on your side. Is there anything that we maybe missed, or any stories that you'd like to tell about appeals that happen in family court?
Well, I mean, pretty much the ones that are worth telling, I've already told.
Okay.
So, but on the last point that you made about not doing this in your own, I can say that I have represented divorce attorneys in their own cases, and even they who know this stuff don't do it on their own. So so obviously this goes even more for people that don't do this every day. Get a lawyer to do this.
So divorce attorneys even get their own
Their own
divorce
attorneys.
attorneys.
Yes.
I mean, I heard about somebody that was a divorce attorney who was getting divorced from a judge, and it was quite a crazy situation. And even he had his representation. I think because people get emotional, and it's really hard to see the forest from the trees, even if you work in that profession. So, I mean, would you agree? Was that pretty much?
Absolutely. In fact, there was a story that went around here, unfortunately. I'm sure it was humiliating. A divorce attorney who tried to represent himself in his own case ended up getting fined for misconduct representing himself. So, yes, it's never a good idea to represent yourself.
Yeah. And, even if you are smarter than the average bear.
Right.
All right. Well, then let that be a lesson to everyone out there. Get an attorney, even if you are an attorney, and and hopefully it will all work out in your favor. And if there are children involved, obviously, for whatever's best for the child.
Right.
So, well, I want to thank you for coming out here on a Friday afternoon, and it really kicks off the weekend, getting some really cool information about what happens in family court. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Might be a different day though, because I'm going to a conference. But yeah, well,
you enjoy. Where's the
yeah,
conference?
I'm working the Richard James conference.
Ah, okay.
That's next week, so we might do this. We'll talk offline about what day we can do it, or maybe we do it twice the next week.
Sure.
We don't want people to miss out on their fix of information of family law. All right. Well, thank you very much. I will look forward to seeing you soon, and I hope everyone out there has a wonderful fall weekend.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.